would like to get Brian
Okay.
Now that is up front.
That's up front.
Let's start now. We're not going to start.
Nothing to vote on.
Yeah, I know. We could have
a meeting with that.
Well, why don't we do the? Oh, here's Mr. Shaw. Hi, Chris. Hi. Welcome. Solve all the issues with damn sauce.
I would lose every debate. I would lose every debate if I did.
All right, well, why don't we do this? We'll go ahead and do introductions and the fluffy stuff. Yeah, and then when they arrive, we'll add them into the mix, and then we'll start our official agenda. So I'm going to start with introductions. We'll start with our board members first. Right, Mr. Brennan. Michael Brennan, with Person of Landscape Architecture.
Jessica Barlow with SANDAG.
Ryan Gosian, which is?
Megan Gamble, Hillcrest Business Association.
And Benjamin Nicholls with the Hillcrest Business Association.
Johnathan Hale with Hale Media.
Tammy Daver with Fulton Management.
Okay, and then we'll start with the table back there, our friends in that table. Wherever you want to start. Just go.
Layla Battingwoo, I'm a business owner and resident.
Okay.
Samantha Ollinger, Bike San Diego.
Matt Wallstrom, Roberts Electric.
Andy Henshaw, that's San Diego County Bike Coalition.
Kalisa Bowling, San Diego County Bicycle Coalition.
Brian Lovering with the Adam Mead.
Very good. And over here.
Elizabeth Studebaker, City of San Diego.
Chris Shaw, Moses Lee.
Mary Joseph, Industrial Systems.
Elizabeth Hanna, Newtown Community Partner.
Okay, very good. I'll reiterate these things for our fellow board members afterwards, but just to touch on a couple of things that I want to highlight that we've been able to accomplish over the past couple of months that we're pretty happy with. First of all, we do have a very important deadline on Friday that's why we call this special board meeting regarding the bike project with SANDAG. So once the others join us, we'll get into that discussion when we have a board meeting. But we've had a couple of legislative successes. One is we did get our contract with the city renewed with a language that we wanted in there, which is making the funds that we raise privately more flexible for us. So Ben's going to go into detail on that when he does his executive director report.
Okay.
But happy to report that. Also, as some of you may have known, the California Restaurant Association, the HBA, and others have went in to advocate against a 45% increase on permits that would have been placed on businesses that serve alcohol, massage therapists, folks in that demographic, and they were successful. So a couple of big wins for us. The homeless project continues to be a success for us. I'm hearing really good things from business owners. I've personally been handing out the cards to folks that I know, and they're really happy that they have a phone number that they can call. If you don't have a stack of those, I would encourage you to get some of them from the HBA office, because there's always someone that says, when we're having a homeless issue, it's super easy to hand that to them, and then they have that phone number, and then they're not calling us, they're calling the counselors and having them handle it for you. Is there anything that you want to chat about?
I'll give my little staff report. We don't really need a quorum for that. And I take this time every month to talk about things that are going on in the office that we're not talking about on this agenda, just to keep the board and the community, if they care, up to speed. As Johnathan mentioned, there's been a couple of successes. At City Hall for us, the police department attempted to raise licensing or police department license fees on entertainment with alcohol, the permits for that, and then massage therapists. And they attempted to raise a whole host of other fees, but those were the two that really stuck out for Hillcrest. We have a lot of massage therapists, obviously a lot of entertainment with alcohol, and some of the fee increases were as much as 45%, which is pretty crazy. So we opposed that with the Restaurant Association and the Gas Lamp Quarter, and that was a success that those fees are completely off the table at this point.
Like Gloria's office.
Todd, and then also Chris Kate, his office was very helpful. The other things I just want to mention, over this past weekend at the Hillcrest Farmers Market, we had a team of students come and visit us from design school in Tijuana, and they're going to be taking all the comments and suggestions that we've been soliciting from patrons at the farmers market about our new community park on Normal Street, and they're going to be taking those suggestions and amalgamating those suggestions into a concerted plan for the park. And they're going to be doing that over the next month or so. And Michael Brennan and I are going to go and visit with them and make sure they're on point. I gave them a tour of the neighborhood, pointed out some cultural facilities and some historic landmarks and things like that. And then we also talked about how we're going to fund the park, so making sure that they include in that the things that will connect us to funding. So that's a really exciting thing that happened on Sunday. We actually got some TV reporting. A TV reporter came out and did a little story on the park, so that's really exciting. We're currently working on the Pride of Hillcrest block party. Last month, you folks approved the new footprint, and so we're really putting that into action, and we're planning a laser light show and flag raising ceremony at 8 o'clock on the night of the block party, so we encourage everybody to come out and be a part of that. I will say it's a lot more festive than the typical flag raising, and a lot less sort of
Party.
It's a lot more party. Yeah, more party, which is always good. And then finally, we are deep in the thick of selling our vendor booths for City Fest. We're about a third of the way through that, a third of the way to goal. And City Fest right now is just about selling vendor space, raising the money. So we're doing that. And then finally, I'm taking a little vacation next week. Megan's going to be running the shop in Hillcrest. So that is.
Where you going?
I'm going to Cabo. I know.
You have email access?
I will have email access. I will have phone access. It's not that far
Texting.
away. Yeah, you can text me. And they put the signs out. The no parks. You can do that. That's fine. I'll be around. I'll be regionally around.
Very good.
So.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to introduce our other board members that joined us. We're 3 now, so we'll start with you, Cecelia.
Cecelia Moreno, Crest Cafe.
Sam Kreis, Garden Kitchen.
And Mr. Kaufman, if you'll introduce yourself everyone.
Charles Kaufman, Bread and Sea.
Very good. So now that we have quorum, yeah. What's that? Oh, I am so sorry. You snuck in. No. Please introduce yourself.
Ben Haddad with California Strategies.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ben. Okay, very good. Well, now that we have quorum, we're going to call the meeting to order. Before we start, I'd like to call for any modifications to agenda. We can't add any items, as you know, but we can remove or delay items if there's any concern about any items on our current docket.
Item number 9.
I saw that. Yeah. So we'll go ahead and strike that one. It's approval of sidewalk cleaning and steam cleaning. We're not voting for that. Okay. Anything else? Okay, very good. If you have any new items that you'd like to consider, we're a committee-based organization, as you know, so those of you that are out in the audience, we welcome you to our marketing meetings, our education meetings. Those were things are born and then brought to the board for consideration. Public comment. We do allow for 2 minutes of public comment per speaker. So we'll go ahead and start with this table over here. Is there anyone at that table that would like to make a public comment?
Non-agenda.
Yeah, so you're welcome to speak if you have anything you'd like to share with us. No? At this table? Anyone? Nothing for you, Elizabeth?
I can come up with something.
You don't have
Wow, Michael, we're going to get you out of here, Michael. All right, perfect. Well, we've already done our president's report, so we'll catch the 3 of you that joined us late up to speed. I'll just a couple of shout-outs and things that we've gotten done this month, past couple of months, rather. So I'm going to move on to the consent agenda, approval of minutes and approval of financials. Tammy? You got it?
Tammy's on there as listed, but simply because she's here.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay. Do we have any
The minutes and financial.
And I would prefer to, and financials.
I second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Did everyone review the packet first or not? Good stuff. All right, then I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Public comment, please?
sorry.
Isn't there public comment?
Would you like to make public comment?
Yes, send an email to Elizabeth Studebaker here at the City of Forming, this organization, that it continues to be in violation of the Brown Act regarding the keeping of minutes, the roll call of votes, the actual recording of names, and actual votes to ensure transparency on who's voting for what.
Yeah, we've been made aware of that, and Megan's actually on top of that, so.
Okay, so that I have
Thank
not
you.
seen any, if there are
Anything
modified
else?
minutes for approval,
Is there any other comment that you'd like to make? We can't get into a Q&A with you, but we can definitely.
it's not about a Q&A, it's about a continuing violation.
All right, so, perfect. So Megan, you got that? So I'm going to call the vote now. All those in favor? Keep your hands up for a minute so Megan can make sure she gets your names down. Unanimous, that'll make it easy on you, okay? All right, moving on to line item number 7, appointment of a new board member. I'm going to let Ben lead this.
Sure. As has been noted by a number of board members, and myself actually, we had a number of folks that stepped off the board, and so we're slowly finding good candidates to step up. Last month, Jessica joined us, which is really exciting, and so this month, I approached Brian Lovering from Adam and Eve. Brian has been involved in the parking committee and also the marketing committee for some time. Brian brings retail representation to our board. It's really critical and important. So Brian's here, and I would love to have folks vote to appoint him to the board to fill a vacancy.
Brian's here. Brian, do you mind standing up and tell us a little about yourself?
Been running the Adam and Eve since 2013, and it's been a really interesting development with the neighborhood, and I look forward to working with the community more as we grow in our store as retail shrinks in Hillcrest, unfortunately.
Very good. And from what Ben's told me, he's been very proactive in helping with projects and so forth, so I think he'd make a great addition. Is there any discussion before we call a vote on this to bring him on? Okay, with that, I'm going to call the vote. Everyone would like to vote? Oh, I need a motion, I'm sorry. Okay. Second? Very good. All right, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Unanimous. Very
Come
good.
on down, Brian.
Come on down.
Come down to the big table.
Welcome.
So just as a side note, I did promise both of you a new board member orientation luncheon, and now that you're both seated in the next, not this week, but the following week, we can get together and have that orientation luncheon. And I will invite all board members who want to come and get a refresher on how the HBA works, what the purpose of the HBA is, how the money works. It's more complicated than you think.
When I began as a board member, I didn't have a glass of water.
Those times were
These are obviously important folks.
You have it now.
And what a big goblet it is.
That's right. I had a fancy room like that.
Solid vodka.
We got a little heft on the board now. Thank you very much.
Do you know you get to take one of the elephants home?
One of the elephants in the
You're
room.
referring to me as the elephant. Okay.
Just make sure you hide it under your coat when you take out all of the journals. All right, very good. We're going to move on to number 8, item number 8. This is position regarding SANDAG bike lane. This is an action. HBI staff, is that correct?
That stuff doesn't.
Okay, so Megan, stay out there till we come and get you, please.
Can you get that food, John?
I'm gonna look for
All right.
Very good. Okay. Benjamin Nicholls and Charles Kaufman and myself met with the folks down at SANDAG and had a productive meeting with them. Pretty much laid down what's transpired since all of this back and forth that's gone on within our community. I'm going to let Ben speak to his interpretation of that first, and then I'm going to speak to his, and then have Charles speak as well. We do have a pressing deadline of Friday to either take a position in favor or not today. So we'll have a little chat about it first, and then let everyone that has anything to say. And I will open it up for public comment as well, because I know there's some folks from the Bike Coalition here today. But go ahead and let Ben give his staff report.
Sure. So just to step back a little bit for the group, and maybe for some of the folks that haven't been as hands-on with this. For the last several years, the Hillcrest Business Association has been advocating for business concerns relating to the bicycle project. SANDAG, the project is SANDAG is proposing to invest in Hillcrest a considerable amount of money relative to what Hillcrest usually gets. But the business community really had some priorities, and so we've made it our task to make sure that those priorities were expressed through SANDAG's work. The business community has expressed priorities, and those include retaining the investment in the neighborhood, so we didn't want to see the money go somewhere else like North Park or something like that. Protecting on-street parking and providing a range of transportation options for our customers. So we are enthusiastic about bicycle lanes, but we're also enthusiastic about preserving people's ability to drive to the neighborhood. And also placemaking was another priority that the community had expressed, the business community. Last year, the HBA voted to support and we advocated for Transform Hillcrest, which is a plan that seeks to place those bicycle lanes in auto travel lanes and reduce auto travel capacity rather than in parking lanes, which is what SANDAG's original plan had been. Now, there's a lot of ideas about Transform Hillcrest and a lot of designs and things like that. And there was the suggestion to put all the travel lanes on the north side of the street and things like that. But in essence, Transform Hillcrest prioritizes bicycles in a travel lane rather than we took that and we advocated for that and we really pushed hard for that, and the first step was having SANDAG and the city analyze Transform Hillcrest even for them to consider it. Because originally when it was proposed, they wouldn't even look at it. And so recently SANDAG and then the city conducted their analysis, they completed their analysis, and they rejected the Transform Hillcrest proposal. They call it a road diet, and their reason for their rejection was because they said that it would mean that there would be unacceptable losses of auto and bus capacity on University. So it would take longer for buses, essentially, and cars, to get from one end of University to the other. And they're saying, some analysis say that between 1 or 2 minutes worth of travel time would be lost. So you'd sit on University for maybe 90 seconds more. There are a lot of folks in the business community, and I've spoken to them, and I personally believe that that loss of travel capacity is an acceptable price to pay for all the benefits of Transform Hillcrest. Placemaking, preserving parking, preserving the investment, including bicycle lanes. I'm frustrated that the city uses that as their reason to dismiss a great community idea. About 3 months ago, the HBA partnered with property owners on the west end of Hillcrest to hire an advocacy firm to advocate to keep the ramp between Washington and University Avenue open, to protect on-street parking, and to ensure that the SANDAG investment in Uptown persists. We don't want to see the investment disappear. Last week, our advocacy firm organized a meeting with SANDAG staff leadership to provide information on SANDAG's revised proposal. Elements of the proposal were emailed out to the board this morning. You should have received SANDAG staff proposal, I guess. It's a little bit different than what they shared with us. They went into a little bit more detail with us. SANDAG staff went into a little bit more detail. And as I recall, and as my notes say, what SANDAG proposed was primarily a shared bike and car way along University Avenue with the use of sharrows. Where there is room, they say, there would, in Bankers Hill, maybe on East University Avenue and around Normal Street, they may install bike lanes similar to the ones that the city has installed on 4th and 5th. I agree with that. Investment in pedestrian-related infrastructure throughout the Uptown area related to bicycle improvements will occur. They did say that. The ramp between Washington and University will remain open, and it will be a shared ramp between cars and bikes. SANDAG staff did say at the meeting, they made a pretty clear distinction that this was their new proposal, and there was a high chance that if this proposal was not acceptable, there would be no vote. They also stated that they didn't anticipate the investment that they had pledged moving away from Uptown. They thought that they would be still spending that $40 million in Uptown on various projects. Uptown being Bankers Hill, Mission Hills, at this juncture, under the current SANDAG proposal, some of the goals of the group have been met. This group, the HBA, including preserving parking, preserving the investment, and creating some bike infrastructure. Our advocacy firm put together a letter, which I modified slightly, Ben. I'm sorry I took that liberty to do that. And I sent it around to the group this morning. But at this point, that's kind of my presentation of the situation. I do believe that as the business association, SANDAG, and various bureaucracies would like to know our position, and so I do think it's important that we have a position. And that's why we're meeting today earlier than we normally would, so we can fit into SANDAG's time. I don't know if you want to speak, Jonathan, Charles, or Ben. I would really love to have your opinions on the meeting, and then give us some guidance as to what
I think you have the proposal, do you have a copy of it?
So what I have is I have a few handouts. That's the letter, and then this is some documents from SANDAG's staff report that they sent around to their transportation committee, and it sort of shows what they're proposing on various sort of small elements of University Avenue. It shows where the most constrained elements would be. So it shows University between 4th and 5th, and University between 7th and 8th. But that's about all it shows. And some of the things that I did note from their staff analysis are, they do note, and I can give out the staff analysis, but in their conclusion, they say, SANDAG staff has developed an alternative to the University Avenue segment that limits the bikeway features, given the design constraints that include parking and vehicular traffic. Under the constrained option, along the majority of this segment, bikes would share the travel lane with vehicles, as those show. In some slightly less constrained blocks, a standard bike lane could be accommodated, either on one or both sides of the block. So they're saying that's the constrained option, and then they're saying where we could find space, we could put a standard bike lane, so not protected but standard. Then they also go on to say pedestrian improvements would also would be evaluated as part of this alternative. So this is their staff report, and I can hand this around. I've highlighted some useful sections for the folks.
Did you get any proposed, are the same routes still, like for example, not just University, there's routes that go north and south?
No, that's all, this is it.
This is it.
So there's no routes going down, let's say,
It's all done.
Street and...
No,
are you talking about Fifth Avenue?
They did mention Fifth Avenue, and they were very vague, but they seemed to imply to me that this infrastructure that the city had already and was currently installing would be adequate. So those bike lanes that you see, they're saying those bike lanes would be adequate. They did talk a little bit about...
I got a slightly different interpretation.
But anyway,
Yeah.
so definitely I want to hear from...
That they might move them, and it wasn't really clear. Like if they were, I mean, can you speak to that? I mean, specifically on Fifth Avenue, I remember we went into a back and forth on that. It was that it was either when, like, they thought that what the city did was good, but there's a possibility that they would move it. There would be some parking loss on Fifth Avenue.
They kind of left that open.
Yeah.
But I think they're, right now they're going to leave it as the way
Okay.
it is. I didn't get the sense that they're going to change it as part of this plan.
The only thing that's not on here, and this really isn't applicable to the Hillcrest neighborhood necessarily, but up Washington Avenue, they were talking about building a wall and a pedestrian and a bike lane. So that's yes. So that is, I got the impression that some of the funds that were allocated for this bigger scope project are being kind of.
Well, that's always been on the wish list.
Yes.
So why don't we go around and...
Yep.
Do you want to speak your piece, and then Charles, and then
Yeah.
I'd love to have Ben speak to what his perception, because it wasn't, they didn't have maps, they didn't have any big pictures, they just verbally told us, so.
So bird's eye view, everything that I've known up to this point is that we were transform Hillcrest is what was being considered. That's what we invested a lot of time into. When Ben asked me to go to the meeting, we didn't know what we were walking into. I was hearing rumors that we were going to lose the funding altogether, and that there were people who were freaked out about that. And so we said we were going to go in there and see what they have to say. Essentially, what they had to say is the funding's not going away. However, this is the project you're going to get, or you're not going to get anything at all. So there is no more debate on it. That was very, very clear to me from the meeting, that if we want investment in Hillcrest, this is the investment that they're offering us at this point. And I know that for our friends in the Bike Coalition, the protected bike lanes on University Avenue is not part of this proposal, but that's not going to happen. I can guarantee you based off of my interpretation of the meeting. Charles, you were there.
No, I think you expressed it well. The only thing I guess that I think they emphasized a bit more about the sidewalk improvements from maybe 3rd West, and that the sidewalks may be, they may put in new sidewalks there, they may have put in trees, they may put in, I forget what else.
And that excites me. I mean, that excites me because they're offering an alternative in an area that we desperately need improvements. And we actually kind of coached out of them in this process. Are we able to make suggestions and try to come up with ideas? And they're very open to that. So that isn't set in stone as to what that looks like yet. There are areas that they're designating, and the Pride Plaza is one of those areas. So I think that I'm fully behind supporting this simply because I don't want to lose this investment.
Plus, I think the important thing we heard is they are going to, exactly what you said, spend the same amount of money as they had originally planned.
Right. So, do you have anything else to add, Ben?
I'd say Gary Gallegos clearly wants to build something.
Right.
He wants to stop planning and just talk and actually get something done. They know that there's no way to do a plan that's going to make everybody perfectly happy, because the area on University Creek is so narrow that to do bicycle-only lanes and so forth is going to mess up a lot of other things, including the mass transit for his own, for MTS and so forth. So there were a lot of non-starters in the Transform Hillcrest program for them. They felt that this compromise, whatever you want to call it, what they got out there now, was the best they could do to get the money spent, to get these things built, to do better pedestrian and bicycle access, starting down 5 points all the way up through to the eastern parts of the university. He did mention Bachman Street as part of what would be part of the overall 40 million, whatever number it is.
Right.
And then 4th and 5th, even those the way they are. But I thought it was a pretty constructive meeting. I think they're hoping, and why you're meeting today, is that this organization can go there this week with the Transportation Committee and say good things about this going forward. There's likely to be opposition, and they would like to think that what they're trying to do here satisfies most of your concerns. You may not get everything that you want, but it's enough that they're hoping that you'll come and support it. Todd Gloria has walked the path with Ron Roberts, and Gary Gallegos have actually walked the entire length of the project area. And they, again, it's not perfect, but they all like what is being proposed here, and they're hoping that the Hillcrest Association would also support it.
Can I just ask you, one of the challenges with Transform Hillcrest is, and Todd has told me this himself, that it will slow down the buses. From your sort of perspective and what you know about the MTS group, the board, and Todd and his priorities for bus transit, what is your thoughts on how Transform Hillcrest relates to that? Is that it seems like for Todd that's a deal breaker.
Yeah, I haven't talked to Todd directly about the buses, so I wouldn't want to speculate on why he said that, or Gary's viewpoint on how the mass transit's affected with it. That was just their view going in. So when we spoke to Todd a couple of months ago now, I think he was prepared to give up some parking because he thought that was probably the only way we were going to get to a compromise. The fact that he doesn't give up parking is an interesting wrinkle in it, and one that I've not gone back to Todd to ask his view, but I think he thought originally there would probably be some loss. It wouldn't have been 80 spots, but it would have been like, well, he thought maybe 20 or 30 places might be lost in the process. So this is actually, if you're a parking person and a retailer, they're going to be happy with this program because you aren't losing any of the parking costs. But I understand the bicycle folks are not going to be thrilled with it because they aren't going to have a separate one on University or on Washington streets for different reasons for the two streets, but there's just no way to do it in the view of SANDAG plans.
And I got the sense that MTS weighed much heavier than the interest of the business in this discussion.
I think that's right.
I really do. I think that probably was what killed the protected bike lane, 50% of the concerns that were raised by Hillcrest businesses. And so, I just asked that the coalition keep that in mind, that this is something that SANDAG decided. This was not something that we went in there and strong argument into. We were very much enthusiastic about cross plans. We were on transforming Hillcrest. A lot of hours and energy into it. We devoted a lot of time at the board level discussing it and voting on it and re-voting on it. So, but this is what's been presented to us today. And with that, I want to go ahead and ask if there's any board members. I'm sure you have some things to say. So,
Do public comment first?
I want to let the board discuss first, and then have the public comment in. Okay. I guess just kind of going off the heels of the meeting that we had yesterday. I got some drill regarding the same project and where we're at with the SANDAG process. So the new proposal in front of us. There was a lot of discussion there about this, not the time yet to give up on transform Hillcrest and the sheer number of hours that have gone into that plan, and the fact that it really brought together all the components of our neighborhood and our community. Everyone was for that plan, and we can look at the analysis of that plan, and it's on its own, it's flawed. We've been spoke to that already. So I think that they could look at that plan again, and if we don't just give up now and say, all right, it's either this modified plan or nothing. I think it's there.
I'm sorry, Michael, could you speak up a little, please?
Oh, yeah. The money is there, and they have to spend it, and I don't think it's going away. So I think that now is the time for us to, rally one more time and say, we want the tenant to transform contract. We don't need everything in it, but let's be serious about the placemaking. And you guys did have a high level discussion with them, but there's nothing in writing. We don't know what they're going to do on the street or from Third West. There's some, there's lots of ideas in our community, and they basically said no to all of them. So I think this is the time to tell SANDAG, we've spent a lot of time and community resources coming up with an idea that everyone likes, and why don't we find a way to make that work? So, placemaking, safe bike infrastructure. Let's not forget this is a bike project, and I think that there's probably the appetite for most of us. So we could lose, 15, 20 parking spaces. We're not saying the original 90, whatever. But when you look at this again, I will tell you, and this is point blank, that this project's slated for 2016. We're in a line of projects, and they say we have projects lined up. What they literally said to us is that we have no more back and forth. Funds are either going to go towards this. If the community continues to fight it, we're just going to reallocate them elsewhere. That is the language that we use. I can't make it any clearer. And so we have to make a decision today as a board is, do we want those funds in our neighborhood at this level, or do we want them to potentially go away? And I know you want to hear that, Mike. We put a lot of energy into this, but that is the reality of how that meeting. So at this transportation committee, what's exactly in front of them? Do they have two options, this option and nothing?
So the documentation that I emailed out earlier today that had the packet that was being supplied to the public packet that was being supplied to the committee members. And that shows the report that I handed around, this, It had Transform Hillcrest in it, so all the committee members will be familiar with that. But it also had this, this is SANDAG's proposal. Now, even this proposal only shows 2 blocks, right? So there is a lot of flex in it, and they kind of wandered into that area during this meeting. And I fully expect Muggs and whoever else is making the presentation at the committee to sort of go down that road too in front of the committee. But they're very vague. They didn't show us this, but they were very vague.
We did not see this.
Yeah.
But I think what they've put before us is the most controversial part of the project, so that they knew that this is off the table. I really believe that's why they've done this for our presentation today. I'm hoping that their vagueness is because they truly want to have some flexibility in working with the neighborhood.
For those 2 blocks.
Well,
No. This is very vague. I mean, there's so much more to this that's missing.
That's
Right?
been
Could
their
be
MO
shows.
all along.
Right.
But how can we vote on something
It's
we
enough to
don't know
drive you
what it is?
cuckoo,
Right.
because they're not direct, they don't state direct, this is it. And I don't think anybody in this room has seen, this is it.
they can
I
specify
certainly haven't seen
but
it.
they talked about areas where there
Without knowing what it is.
were
That-
pedestrian
that's-
improvements. They did specify things in our conversation with them.
Yeah, so they didn't put it on paper, but I mean, and in some ways, this staff report does allude to the idea that if their analysis permits them to do regular bike ways in certain areas, then they will do it, which is essentially what they told us. But they're not gonna they didn't put anything on paper. So how can you vote on something that you don't know? But that's been the process with SANDAG for the last 3 years. They don't put things out. And they're not going to, I don't think SANDAG staff is going to put out the plan to their own board or their own committee. So there is no answer to that question.
That just means that they're putting us in a bad position to vote on something that we don't have the knowledge of. And honestly, they should be presenting it to all of us and answering any questions that everybody has before they ask us to indefinitely vote on something.
Maybe that's what we asked for. When they come back with a better.
The devil's in the details.
And be able to answer.
I think again, just to repeat, I think they're gonna say, forget about it. I think if we come back with that.
This is a funding discussion.
Yeah, they're gonna say,
This is, do
okay,
we want the money?
I feel
I know that
like-
sounds really vague, but that's really.
I feel like whatever they're gonna do, it's gonna happen. And it is happening. I think, so this is the point where, do we need the money to improve to transform the Hillcrest?
It's literally that. I'm
Pretty
like,
much,
do you want
that's what
something done?
they're
Or,
doing.
and that's what they're
It's like
putting
a
in.
very vague, and anything can change.
Friday,
anywhere.
this is happening Friday.
So,
You know, and that's what we can say to them. We want this project to happen. We want to invest in Hillcrest. We want safe bike infrastructure. We want place making. And if we can make all those things happen, then we're on board. You know, but
Even if they
Or at
can
least
make all those
discuss
things
it.
happen, then we're still on board.
Yeah.
We want the funding spent.
not the funding,
You know,
but
we want
we
to
also want more information
That is different, yeah.
as well.
Okay.
So,
I'm gonna let Ben, let's let Ben read the letter, because I want you to, at first, if you didn't see it in your board packet, and there was a pretty lengthy document that was sent out that had more than these 2 pages.
I
Yeah,
And ever, yeah.
I have, so I have a letter that was put together, Ben put it together and I modified it. And then I have had some suggestions as to how to, again, modify this letter. And so, as an advocacy tool, a letter is a good place to start. Dear Tom, this is what we want. The letter currently says, in case you didn't read it, I'll just read it. On behalf of the Hillcrest Business Association, Board of Directors, please accept this letter in support of SANDAG's revised scope of work for the Uptown Bike Corridor. HBA representatives recently met with SANDAG to discuss the revised scope, and we appreciate SANDAG's commitment to improving the pedestrian experience along University Avenue while also providing additional bicycle infrastructure along Washington Street and University Avenue. It is equally important, it is our understanding the revised scope will maintain the eastbound vehicular access to University Avenue from Washington Street, and it will also minimize the parking loss along University Avenue throughout the Hillcrest Business Core. The HBA has always advocated for a balanced plan, one that provides alternative transportation options while still respecting the reality that many customers access Hillcrest by car. We feel both goals are met under the revised scope, and we respectfully ask for the Transportation Committee's support. As this plan moves forward, the HBA is committed to partnering with SANDAG, the City of San Diego, and the respective transportation and community groups to ensure the project is designed well and provides the most significant impact possible for Hillcrest residents and businesses alike. We look forward to working with SANDAG to ensure that the proposed new infrastructure be installed in appropriate areas of opportunity, such as East University Avenue and Normal Street. It is our intention to work with our partners, such as the Uptown Community Parking District, to connect community funds to this project to ensure the best project is created and maintained into the future. Thank you for your consideration and support of this substantial investment. So, my recommendation would be, if there are modifications to this letter that can be made, that we should do that. But I do believe that we should have a position. I did receive an email from Sam at Bike San Diego, and she made some suggestions to modify the letter. I don't know if you want to read this, Sam, or if you want me to read it on your behalf.
Go ahead, Sam, go ahead.
Hi everyone, I'm Samantha Ollinger, Executive Director of Bike SD. I have it on my phone here, so I can just read it out.
I guess just before you start, I do really appreciate your, a lot of people saw this letter and they got upset. But you saw this letter and you wanted to make suggestions, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I really appreciate that. A lot of you may have heard me. I just want to say hello. And I know Mike Brennan very well because I served with him on the Bicycle Advisory Committee. And just a little bit of an introduction just before I start, in case you don't know me. I run a nonprofit organization called Bike San Diego. We just do work with the City of San Diego with the Urban Core. We're independent, meaning we get no funding from any government agency. SANDAG does not give us money. We have to care for us. I want to just put that out there. Late last fall, when we heard that all of you were supporting the National Hillcrest plan, we actually invited Jim Frost to our board meeting to present his plan to our board. And our board unanimously voted to support the plan. And we actually sent that letter to Beth Rover, who's project manager for Uptown, because we wanted to be consistent. It was a plan that you clearly all supported, and we wanted to be consistent with that and show our support. And it addressed all the different concerns that all the community members have brought up over the last 2.5 years. So we wanted to show people our support too. So I think a lot of people didn't know that we actually sent that letter out. I know I sent it to Mike Brennan and Mike Shaw, but in case none of you were aware of it, we did support the plan unanimously. The second thing is, I'm not a walking expert. That's why we have a walking advocacy organization. There's a lot of issues around pedestrian issues, and I'm also not a transit. So much issues around transit. But I've been vaguely aware that there's been a streetcar project now, which has been a study that's been going on for several years. I do know, just anecdotally, that that's been something that's been very supportive within the community here. I just don't know to what degree, so I'm a little bit unfamiliar with the specifics of it. But one of the things I've noticed is that the whole SANDAG Regional Transportation Plan is really a result of a mandate both from the federal government as well as the state to create an actual strategy on how they're going to expend taxpayer dollars to provide transportation options. And they were sued the last time around. This time around they're also under a lawsuit. But last time when they were sued, there was actually a settlement agreement that SANDAG, Gary Gallegos, and everyone else made in 2008. They signed the settlement agreement, and one of the requirements of it was to provide an urban core, urban transit strategy. And that was something that the SANDAG board, when they agreed to not pursue this any further, they committed to. Unfortunately, they did not work that urban core transit strategy within the current regional transportation plan. Part of that regional transportation plan includes these bike projects. And it's a little bit too wonky, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it. And I also apologize in case it's duplicative information that you also already know. So my suggestions to Ben was if you could include within this letter, to include the fact that SANDAG higher-ups, the ones who are threatening you with removing funding, promised to actually include an urban strategy within their next update. That has never been actually part of the discussion. I think a lot of you may have seen the study that has transpired that calls for a streetcar up 4th and 5th on University. So that is also part of the overall regional plan, but it's never been analyzed in conjunction with the bikeway project. So you're seeing these two separate things, two separate projects, and you get all these different communities competing against one another. The bike people are fighting against the parking people versus the business community versus the transit people and the bus and everybody else. But as part of an overall paradigm, you need to look at all options together. You cannot look at one thing in a vacuum, because one implementation always addresses something and it triggers something else. So the suggestion I had was to actually, I'll just read it out. Since HBA supported the Transform Hillcrest plan unanimously, have some sort of language that calls for an alternative proposal that includes placemaking and design solutions that are inherent within the Transform Hillcrest to build community consensus. We all know that there is consensus on Transform Hillcrest, so that language could be part of the ask itself, whatever further things that SANDAG comes up with. Number 2, to include within the above details the Uptown Streetcar feasibility study into the overall multimodal analysis to be in compliance with the 2008 settlement agreement. I sent a copy to Ben, he's probably sent it to you, that requires SANDAG to provide a transit plan within the city's urban core and reject any analysis that includes level of service, which is now defunct. It's essentially a way of measuring traffic delay, but not including the fact that sometimes people choose other alternatives. So it doesn't count for the fact that you might actually walk, you might take the bus, you might take transit, or you might even ride a bike when you're actually getting around. The only thing it measures is vehicle delay. And the proposal that SANDAG currently has on the table calls for that there will be bus delays if there's protected bikeways. But at Shero, if you're in the middle of the street, I mean, bicycle riders currently have an access to the entire lane. If you can imagine a bus behind it, to me, instinctively, and I'm sure to you, a bus is being delayed because there's a site but it's a little bit contradictory what you're trying to say. So to include that within it, because the state has actually rejected level of service as a metric on how to measure. They haven't come up with an alternative, but they've indicated that reducing vehicle miles traveled is probably what is going to be replaced. So we're kind of in a little bit of a flux right now because we don't know what the alternative level of service is. That's what the city rejected the Transform Hillcrest.
Sam, do you think that they're using the public transit as as that strategy? I mean, not using individual cars?
I don't understand.
In other words, you think that's how they're sort of, you're saying that there's agreement, but they're maybe circumventing that by saying that the delay is because of the bus transit.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that's necessarily a valid argument. If you're,
Okay.
Because traffic engineers have been trained to just use one method of traffic delay. They don't account for everybody else.
Right.
And if it's already been rejected and they haven't been trained in what an alternative is, I'm not sure you can actually say that they're doing one of the
Got it. Yeah.
And the third suggestion I had was to, within the above analysis, specifically include a proposal to minimize parking lots, which would include, and this is something I'm sure Elizabeth Cannon is familiar with, all sorts of parking management principles that include choice, efficient utilization, flexibility, prioritization, route management, and comprehensive analysis of parking management strategies. That was the essential core of it. Essentially to have a much more robust analysis than just what they presented to you. That's why I can answer questions, but.
I think we should do that.
Yeah, I got it. I know Michael said he had to go fairly soon. Like now, probably.
I can do it in more minutes.
Okay. So, is there anyone that has essential public comment that would like to speak on this issue?
Sure, I will. Andy Hanshaw with the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition, and I too am on the I chair the Bike Advisory Committee that Mike serves on, and Samantha as well. A couple of things. I do think that there is, a couple of things. So there's a week or so ago, or even a couple of weeks ago, there was some good productive discussions with Ben, with Elizabeth, with the bike community, with Circulate, and others to talk about what are those things we really agree on in this project. Really, why can we all come together on some things? And it was really good. It was really productive. And I would say it was going in the right direction to make it known that we want to work together to have something that's that we can all work together on. We're going to submit a letter to that effect, and that didn't happen. I'm not sure why, but that didn't happen. Secondly, You know, we want to continue. We do think that there's the chance to ask SANDAG to clearly look at options that we can all continue to work on. SANDAG hasn't been back to the community since last June, from what I understand.
February.
Or February.
February 14th.
February of 14.
That is June.
Yeah, I mean it's been a long time. Point is that there's some analysis, there's some alternatives, there's some things that people don't even know that the community wants to know, and that includes the bike community. So we think that you know we'd like to, and this is a bike project. This is an important investment, and I want you all to look at that diagram for one more key thing, and sort of the constrained recommendation. If you'll look at, if you just the picture tells it all. That's not a safe scenario. It's not safe for anybody who wants to come to Hillcrest to ride a bike, who wants to access it. You've got it, literally, this picture tells it all. You've got cars and bikes side by side, or you know, in the door zone, whatever it is. It's an unsafe scenario, and there's a big gap in this beautiful $40 million bikeway project, or this nice bikeway project that's meant to link all these communities and get people moving in other ways, and helping all kinds of greenhouse gas emission standards, and getting more people actively moving. And a key component of this plan is economic development. And I can tell you that protected bikeways have statistically shown to help local businesses, period. You put that infrastructure in, it's going to help the local businesses. And that's been showing, it's been happening all over the country. It's happening in New York City, it's happening in Long Beach, it's happening all over. That's a benefit I want to tell, especially all of you. I'm a small business owner as well. My wife and I own a wine bar in town and restaurant, and we know the value of getting people to our business, and having parking for them is important. I understand that. But we think that we can accommodate people with parking and people who want to come in other ways too. So it's important to us. Safety is the #1 important thing to us, and so we want to ask for you to join us in support of asking SANDAG to do better than this, to do better, particularly on University Avenue. It's going to make us all, you know, happier. And I just don't think that there's been enough information coming back from SANDAG that says that, and that's really our ask. And you know, and that's what we're going to be asking for. Thank you, Ben. And I also ran a BID, by the way, in my previous life.
So I want everyone that's here visiting us today to know that we don't disagree with any of these things. Like, we've already walked through this the past 2 years and have come to an agreement on a plan that we all find good for us. I don't think that's the discussion that we're having today. The discussion we're having today is that it's been rejected, and that they've put forth an alternative, and it's a funding issue. And so we do take the risk if we vote to not say we're gracious for this funding opportunity, that they do go away. I'm definitely open to incorporating additional language. And Sam, thank you so much for bringing these ideas forward. I wasn't aware of that agreement, and that's, I think there might be a soft way of putting that in there without poking them in the eye type of thing, because
I trust Ben could do that really well.
That's what I'm afraid of here, is that I don't, it's like, whatever, sorry. Oh, yeah, we got someone back, Mr. Shaw? Yeah.
Chris Shaw, I think this plan for me is the best win-win, because I'm not losing parking at any floor of our restaurant. But the transform Hillcrest made Hillcrest. It will transform it. It'll make it into a world-class community. And I really was excited about it. I thought the changes were good. And these letters are nice. They sound a little wishy-washy. They still know, point. We should just say exactly what we mean, what we're going to do. Point one, call them on their bluff. That's what we want to do. Call them on the bluff, and then hire a marketing guy to shame our public officials for not listening to our community, because our community is spoken all the way around, and when nobody's listening to us. They're doing exactly what they want to do, and they've been doing the same thing for the last 3 years. Okay, wasting all of our time.
One question I had with this plan is that they consistently have these left turn lanes, and left turn lanes are not necessary if the light sequencing is appropriate. You can still have a two-way traffic scenario and still have, you wouldn't need the shared lane if you remove the left turn lane.
and sequenced the lights appropriately, there wouldn't be a need for that.
I guess it's a transportation plan thing, and this is what the transportation
I mean,
plan
it's,
is.
you're talking about only 6 or 7 blocks.
That's what the transportation people are saying. But I will point out, there's a lot of people who say that the analysis of Transform Hillcrest was completely flawed. A lot of people criticize it.
Luke, you had something to say?
Yeah, Luke Terpstra, Hillcrest Town Council. I'm just going to echo what everybody has said, and I agree with everything that everybody has said. In terms of your letter, I like the additions that Sam has made. I don't think we should let go of Transform Hillcrest yet. We all came together and worked very hard to put this together with Jim Frost's help. It's something that we committed ourselves to. And just because a bully says it's over, I don't think we should let go of it yet. I think we should continue to nurture it. We're still in the design process. They know what we want. This area is very, very late in the century for bike infrastructure. And they need to step up to the plate and do the right thing.
I will say that one of the things that they said in the meeting too, that we didn't have consensus, and we actually did have consensus on a lot of things, and I think that plan moving forward was consensus. So, you know, I would advocate, in addition to the letter and Sam's comments, is that maybe we itemize those things. These are the
I just want to
improvements.
be, can I just interject?
Yeah,
I just want to,
Let me finish the thought. That these are the things that the bike community, the business community, and that came to consensus on. These are the things that we put forward, and we still would very much like those items to be considered. You know, again, I'm concerned about losing the funding. I did not walk out of there with the impression that this was going to go past, you know, that decision. I didn't.
I just want to, language is very important, and when we're talking about things, we talk about sharrows, dedicated bike lanes, protected bike lanes. That's how kind of I look at the 3 options along the way. And I want to be sure that if we put any language in here that Transform Hillcrest, we're discussing the east end of Hillcrest, not the west end, because I was never thrilled with Jim's analysis of what he did on the west side, making it a one-way street with the on and off ramps closed coming up Washington. So I want to be sure that any language that we put in here separates that, and that the bicycle community is behind the sharrows on the west side as a compromise before we move forward.
One of the reasons why I put this 3rd paragraph in here, or this 4th paragraph in here, is because it tries to speak to working with SANDAG to implement infrastructure where they can. And I think where they can, I mean, you can call that out more than I have, so I say East University and Normal to
Maybe we
ensure
just
the
need to put the
proposed new
language in
infrastructure
about-
be installed in appropriate areas of opportunity such as East University and Normal Street.
It's frustrating to not have that report right now. I mean, I'll admit that when I saw what was sent in the email, I was like, okay, the full report of what exactly the details are.
Block by block.
Block by block. I mean,
No,
that is.
no, no. The report that you're talking about, that document that was sent out, that's transforming Hillcrest. That's
No, I'm talking about this.
There,
Yeah, but
probably
that,
came up.
they didn't, their plan doesn't show lockdown.
Okay, I know that. That's what I'm saying. It's
I'm
frustrating.
That is frustrating, yeah. That's it.
That we don't have that to go from, and so I feel like, you know, and I agree with everyone's concerns that walking into this is that this is a blank slate type of thing. So I just don't know how you craft a letter that says, please give us the funding to.
Yeah,
Like what I had to say.
No, there's, I've been trying to avoid, there's a dip.
I
I've
quit.
been trying to avoid,
Sit
sorry.
here.
I was trying to avoid the difference
okay.
in table height.
Yeah.
That's usually me that does that kind of thing. Thank you.
Sorry.
The other thing I just want to point out is that there's we could write I mean, we could write 100 pages over the failings of the government entities in this entire process, not to mention our community plan updates that we're still waiting for, that we've been waiting for years. The streetcar, I think Elizabeth can talk to how much money's actually been spent on study after study after study on streetcars, and they're no farther along in that process than they were over a decade ago. So I mean, all of those things are hugely frustrating to I think everyone in this room that cares about what's going on.
That's government. They
Well,
talk out two holes in
it certainly is our reality in San Diego, and so I mean, if we had a community plan update, all of these things would have already been laid out,
That's a
ideally,
whole other story.
all of it. So it's just another.
Sam, Sam had another comment.
Yes, the comment about losing funding, there's a couple of, I mean, this is why Todd Gloria is a representative of this area. You know, he's supposed to be the advocate for the area. And Gary Gallegos does not have the sort of discretion to just yank funding if he doesn't like the way the community is going. And I've heard rumors that that's how he tries to negotiate, and I think it's very improper from a citizen's perspective, from a community perspective. And I think you all are really strong as both advocacy groups, and you represent a lot of different stakeholders, that I think you can definitely, as subtle of a way that Ben is definitely capable of calling him out, that that's just unacceptable as a solution. I think personally that was just a scare tactic because there's so many laws in place to mandate what kind of funding comes in and how these goals need to be met regionally as well as statewide, that I hope that that is not something that scares you away. I would definitely encourage you to, I mean, at the end of the day, we're asking for just more analysis. That should not be something that really is that terrifying of a prospect. Thank you.
I have a question. Just to clarify, Johnathan, you said the going north and south on Buckland and all those are gone. But then the gentleman there said...
No, they talked about improvements in those areas.
Okay, do we have anything on that?
It's in the report. I mean, there's language in there about Mission Valley to...
Yeah, they've got language in there, there's just no detail.
Yeah.
So it's pretty broad, and that's...
And then our letter, going back, was talking about, University Avenue and bike infrastructure along Washington Street and University Avenue. So we just see stuff on University Avenue, nothing on Washington Street. I mean,
It was Washington meaning coming up the hill.
Right, so the improvements they're going to do in Washington aren't actually within our bid.
They're not talking about the Washington area that runs parallel to
No.
University. They're talking about the Washington area from 5 points up to
Up,
Hillcrest.
so the hill.
That's what they're talking.
So, I know we could go round and round in circles. What I need
You
is
need a directive to go and fight.
yeah, and a lot of the times, and I know, and I hate that they do this, but a lot of times, if you want to make a statement, you have to fill out a speaker's slip, and at the top of the speaker slip, often it says for, opposed, or in support. And so you can do a support with caveats. The statement and the letter could be in support with caveats. I do want to emphasize that my impression was if everybody shows up and says we hate everything about this plan, then they'll walk away. Now, I don't know the law, but I do. If I tell somebody about the Hillcrest Business Association that we're not going to fund something, I'm pretty sure we're not going to fund it. And if Gary Gallegos, the leader of SANDAG, says, or the top staff person says, we're not going to fund something, I'm going to take them seriously. So I don't know, like there's nuance to be had.
We agree with the intent of the letter too, so we don't have specifics, but at least they're kind of moving in the direction that trying to unite all of us. So I think we should give them support for that as well.
But just, we're not the only players here. We have the bike coalition, we have the residents. They all have equal, if not more, voice in this. I mean, just because we gotta say we don't approve, that doesn't mean, okay, you guys are not gonna get funded. All the other players in this have a voice, I think.
Right, but if we agree with the intent of the letter.
But the intent is very vague.
But we're speaking to our organization and our members.
We're representing our members.
Today, we're discussing our businesses.
Our businesses.
I mean, the Bike Coalition is very much in contact with SANDAG, and they've been advocating for their groups, and so residents, same thing.
It's our job to advocate for our membership.
So we have
No
to,
matter what we think about it.
what our decision today has to be based on what we feel the membership of our feel would be best for our community. And, you know, and as Chris said, in his scenario, the Sherlock and University, no lost parking, that's great for him. But he also said that he very much liked the plan that was put forward and thought it would be a great investment for our neighborhood. I agree with that. I think all of us agree with that. I think that we all agree with that.
Well, I'm not opposed to putting that language in.
I'm not either.
I'm not either.
No.
So,
Maybe you could modify paragraph 4, the sort of impromptu paragraph that I wrote,
right.
that says something to the effect of, that makes it stronger, that says, we look forward to working with SANDAG to implement many of the ideas that the community created through the Transform Hillcrest analysis, or something like that.
As part of the final plan.
Some kind of language about virtually every single stakeholder agreed on that concept.
I think that's a great idea.
And
I think
and
that-
so it's kind of like
So you
you as our political leaders need to make that happen. It's kind of the same message we've had from the get-go, right? Make it work, people. Make it work. It's like make it work. They've been the valley of no, and I just it's pressing.
I mean, I can strengthen that paragraph and refer to Transform Hillcrest or elements of Transform Hillcrest. But I do want to, the letter generally is in support of SANDAG.
But with them understanding that they can't just be strong opinions. You know, that the opinions of the community are what should matter going into this. And
Well,
that they're going to need to
Then you
have
need
a
to be prepared, though. You need to be prepared that they're going to do something that none of us like, and then we all need to be prepared to go to court.
Right.
And, I mean, you have to be able to open your checkbook and write a check if you're, if you want to, do that, and that's in my personality, I'm not opposed to that, but then you have to be prepared to fight hard.
Because it's SANDAG, it's not.
Right.
It's not our local.
They're used to going to court.
group. They're
So-
obviously they've gone
Yeah.
2 times.
So, I mean,
Well, and they're gonna do what they wanna do.
They're gonna do,
so-
and if they pull the trigger, they
Gonna
can
have
throw away all of our plans.
I don't think they're gonna do what they're gonna do. I think if you all go in there and you don't have consensus, there's no support for what they're suggesting, I don't think they'll do it.
You don't think they'll do anything, they will do.
But then we won't have anything.
Well, you won't have anything for a while, but you can analyze more, as Samantha was saying, and you might be able to come back eventually. But you are running the risk that you may not get funding for quite some time. If that's okay, then you'd rather continue to
talking
analyze.
decades.
You could be, I don't know what the
put
timeline
the
would
language
be.
in for the
So-
deadline.
You shot the
Put the
gun.
language in for the deadline.
Ben, I mean, you deal
But
with
the
these agencies all the
2016,
time.
we're fine with your timetable, but we want this. Yeah.
Is there a paragraph that we could craft that would convey that sentiment, but also convey the urgency that you're talking about, where, like, this is the deployment of early action money, and we want that early action money.
Yep.
But, I mean, I don't want to send a letter that starts off saying we love you and then ends up saying we hate you.
So, and again.
Well,
So it sounds like a lot better.
Wow.
they have the funds.
Sam, I'm like, one more time, because
The funds are supposed to be spent within the first 10 years of the plan.
Right.
So we're about 3 years in. So
Okay.
they're mandated to spend it within the next 7 years.
okay, good.
So there you go, that's what we need,
But I'd like that before
But
then.
are they mandated to spend it in a specific area, or do they have flexibility to?
They're mandated
Well, that's
to
what the
spend
board
it
voted on.
here.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
Uptown and Mid-City got the first set of funding.
gotcha. Okay, so they have to do this within, and is the Bike Coalition comfortable with 7 years?
That was what they agreed to, yes, originally, like about 3 years ago.
So, Ben, we were all in a meeting together, and I didn't get the sense that they weren't going to be in a continued dialogue with us. I really do feel like they want to move forward, and that they want us to continue to have conversations with them about the areas that they can improve. I do not think that any further discussion on dedicated bike lane on University Avenue is a starter for them. I think that I believe they've made their decision.
Well,
I
let's
think-
find out.
Yeah.
This meeting on Friday is open to everybody.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now, can we look at what they have to say on Friday and come back and say something, or?
No, we need to say, it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like-
This is a
Otherwise, we're
decision.
gonna be the
No,
only
they're
entity that's
going
not
forward.
And they're gonna make a decision on Friday?
Yes.
About general direction.
General
We're
direction.
not pinning down details.
Then, maybe in your letter, to say we look forward to continuing
Dialogue.
our dialogue to the final, to our conclusion of the final plan, with
We
input.
feel many of
Just
the.
the reminder that everyone
That's what I'm saying. We feel
coalesced
that many of the components within the Transform Hillcrest proposal that had consensus could be implemented under this.
So why don't I recraft the paragraph that essentially says, we look forward to continuing our dialogue with SANDAG in regards to making improvements where feasible, and then bring up specific things
Yes.
that were in Transform Hillcrest.
Yes.
I think I could write that later, and then if you're comfortable with it.
But I also think we need to make a note that this organization can't just,
We're gonna have to craft it.
Craft it right now.
yeah, start crafting.
Yeah.
Start crafting.
We can move on to another item and circle back.
Yeah.
You have to have the language. We can't vote on it without the language. You want to use that? No. Okay.
Instead of spending everyone's time while he's crafting language, maybe what we can do is have bullet points of what needs to be hit upon. And then we can vote on that specific terminology, the language, bullet points, and he can craft the final document subject to our.
That's fine. I'm good with that too, if everyone else is.
But I think that one item that we need to really try to convey is that they have a requirement to spend that money in our community. So the fact that they're threatening to pull it.
I don't think that's really, I wouldn't
He
hear,
said that
I
in the
didn't
very
hear
first
that when I
meeting
was
months ago.
there.
Okay.
I didn't hear that when I was with Gary, only a couple of weeks earlier than that.
So it's not use it now or lose it.
No, I
It's,
didn't sense that at all. I think he was trying to convey that if you can't get something done now, it's gonna delay when this will ever get done. And so he, instead of I think he used the term paralysis by analysis, he'd like to get something built for Hillcrest. And this is what they can agree on now. We can all agree to go forward. It isn't exactly what everybody wants, because it's not Transform Hillcrest.
right.
But it's something. But he's not threatening to never spend money up here if we don't agree.
Just
that
this
we can
project
say it.
would stop.
Good language.
Yeah.
So one other topic, or one other bullet point that we could maybe speak to is that we want to resolve it within a reasonable amount of time. So we can say we look forward to working with you to resolve it within the next 4 to 6 months, or whatever their specified timeframe is, so we can get that unified consensus with not only SANDAG, but the general community, including the business community.
Well, and I think if we get this, because I think they want our support. And if we start saying we want it in 4 to 6 months, we want this, this, and this.
No, I'm not
they
saying,
gotta,
no, that's not what I'm saying
I
at all.
think the intent is what, I think the we go with the flow, we go with what the intent of what
That was not what I was trying to convey.
okay.
What I was trying to convey is they had a sense of urgency that we finalize this plan. We don't have the data to say we're 100% behind you. So my thought was that we tell them, we can continue to have this dialogue, but we still want to have some kind of final plan
Well, I
within a
think we
short
said we
period of
want
time.
input into, as this plan progresses, we
Yeah.
want to have, we want input. Now,
If this is what they're suggesting for the block that's right over here, I love this idea, because it doesn't screw with my business. What it doesn't do is it doesn't clarify the Transforming Hillcrest for the rest of the neighborhood, like the neighborhood needs work on the east side. So there's more room over there. So I've got some bullet points that I think might summarize. So these are the bullet points, this is not the paragraph. The bullet points would be that we would like to continue dialogue with SANDAG as an active partner. We would like to work with SANDAG staff on installing infrastructure where appropriate, with the goal of implementing many of the placemaking and economic development ideas expressed in Transform Hillcrest. And that we will be an active partner, and we will encourage others, such as the Uptown Community Parking District, to be an active partner in this process. So it's essentially saying, we are with you, but we want to be part of the process of determining where money gets spent, and which places are appropriate, right? Like we don't, there isn't room in the West End. There is room in the East End, and we want to help you to make it work down there with these Transform Hillcrest ideas. So, continuing dialogue, installing the infrastructure where appropriate, with the goal of implementing the placemaking and economic development agenda of Transform Hillcrest, and we will be an active partner, and we will solicit other.
And we will let Sam remind them that they haven't lived up to their 2008.
Bingo.
Can we make a motion to
endorse that letter?
All right, wait, one moment, so we're gonna do one more really quick round.
With the Transform Hillcrest, that had consensus with the entire community.
That
Yes.
had consensus, okay?
Yeah, I think
Got
that's
it?
really,
Good.
that's important.
That's good.
Absolutely.
It's good.
Okay.
That matters to politics. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so Ben, how do you feel about that?
I think it's good. I think as long as you're not advocating Transform Hillcrest as the solution,
Right.
which you're not doing, you're talking about elements that are parts of the agreement. I think you're good. They are not there to transform Hillcrest. If you're going to link it to that as your answer, that's a non-starter. But I think mentioning it in the positive aspects, the gentleman's suggestion of talking about the consensus that was here, that's all good. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's good to add.
Can you take a look at my paragraph?
Sure.
Yeah. So if we vote on this, basically what's happening is Ben is going to recraft this letter in the spirit of what we're voting on, and then I'll have to approve it. And you just have to be comfortable with that. And we can share it with you in advance, but there won't be a lot of time for a bunch of back and forth.
No, I know, and then I will.
And I'm going on Friday.
I will present it.
I will Friday.
Okay.
I would like to just,
I can get you the information. It's downtown at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And
Should we go on front? I mean, is it important to
Well, I think
have?
if you have this consensus around the language, you should all go if you can and speak.
Well, should we have other folks on the west end of the business community go as well? Is this going to be, are there going to be people from all different?
I think somebody has a trolley.
hey, let's get the
Can we use the trolley? Come on. That'd be amazing. That would be absolutely amazing. See if you can work that out.
I would like
We
to
can hop
just,
on it.
I would
Okay.
just like to ask that we see the version that is reviewed, so we know that
Yeah.
it's the final.
I'll monkey with your letter and I'll send it to you, and then you can put the final polish on it.
Let's get a motion.
Side note,
I
speak with her
motion.
about.
I motion that we proceed as directed in our discussion with the bullet points and a second review after our consultant has had a chance to make sure our points are on that.
I second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All right. So all those in favor?
That's fine.
That's okay. He'll track it.
6, 7, 8.
Okay. So there's 8. So everyone but Delore. Are you abstaining?
Abstaining.
Okay. Opposed? Okay. Delore's going to abstain.
Abstaining.
Hey,
So one
Jonathan,
abstain.
Yes.
what's the method of delivery for your letter? Do you have an idea there? Are you reading it out loud Friday or?
This is going to talk to Maria, and then it'll be, and then we'll read it out. I believe. Are you going to read it out loud, or just
Yep.
deliver it? Okay.
Or delivered in a narrative.
Very good. Okay.
I just have one last item. It's really important. So before you guys go,
Well, she's grabbing